Thank you for your purchase of our Tach-It Mini-Con BL. We hope this setup video will help you to get the unit running for your particular application quickly. We're going to start at the front of the machine and work our way back. So this is our label feeding station, and when you get the machine, this arm will not be attached. There are 3 metric Allen screws that hold this arm onto the main plate, which are 1, 2, and 3 here. And these screws will go through the arm into the main plate. We will supply you with a set of Allen wrenches in metric sizes for ease of use. Once you have the brake arm installed, you can now load your labels. On the front of the machine is a loading diagram for the labels, and because of the spacing, in order to make it easier, we have a latch here which will raise the label head up and it pivots back to give you easier access. So the label roll will go on. You have a spring clamp which holds the outer flange on, and it's designed for a 3-inch core label. So you just put the roll labels on, put the flange on, and then using the spring clamp, hold everything tight. So per the diagram, the labels will feed under this roller and up onto the brake arm roller. Now, one secret about the machine to ensure that the labels are going to feed in the proper orientation is the label will touch this brake arm roller. What you'll also notice is on each of the rollers, you have these spring clamps. These will help the labels to travel straight, and they don't require any tools to adjust. So the labels will go underneath this roller and up above the brake arm roller. And as we mentioned earlier, the label must touch this roller. And then we come down from this roller and through the gap in our horseshoe sensor. Now on this roller, there's a small urethane wiper here, and this is just to keep a little tension on the label before it goes through our non-contact horseshoe sensor. This makes sure of consistent feeding. On the sensor itself, there's a label and there'll be a black arrow. That is the actual detection point of the sensor. And where possible, you want to try to get that into the center of the label. If not, it is not necessarily a problem, but that is the optimal way. The sensor will move in and out utilizing this thumb screw across this rail. It will also move up and down. Now the up and down will affect how the travel of the label relative to the separator plate here, or the peel plate. And what we want is we want the label to feed about 2 millimeters down below that peel plate. And that can be adjusted by moving this sensor up and down using this thumb screw. And there is also a setting in our touchscreen controller that will assist with that as well. So going back to the actual feeding, once we are through the gap in the horseshoe sensor, the label will come down and then go down between this urethane wiper, which again is to keep tension on the label, and then around our peel plate or our separator plate, which is this. We then go up over this roller, and this is our feed station. Now you'll see there's an open and close. When we're feeding the label or taking a label off, we want the handle to be up in the open position. This will create a gap where you can bring the liner over the purple roller and underneath the knurled roller up to the rewinder. And then this U-pin will help wind up all the extra label liner stock. once the label is properly fed, the first thing we want to do is we want to close that. So our label's now fed. What we would do now is close the top by pressing down and using the latch to secure it. And this whole label head can move laterally across these two bars. And that's done easily just by opening up this thumb screw, physically moving the label head so that it's in the position you want it to, laterally across the product being labeled, and then you just want to secure it again. For purposes of this video, this is a roller that applies the label onto the product being labeled. We've lifted it up so that you can see the actual process. There's a thumb screw which allows you to adjust the position and tension of this roller. So as we move back on the machine, we have our feed rollers, which are these rollers, and then we have our large orange belt here, or red belt, excuse me, which is called our move belt or our feed belt. This is what will bring the product through and under the label head. Also, as we can see from under here, you'll see that there's a red light by my finger. That is our start sensor. That is the sensor that will detect the product, be it the heavyweight bag, pouch, or flat box as it's traveling through, signaling the labeler that it needs to label. Moving a little further back, we have two yellow straps, one on each side of our move belts. These are lightweight, and they're just adding a little downward pressure onto the product to help keep it flat and straight as it's moving. These are adjustable by thumb screws on the shafts, where you can adjust them in and out, and also you can adjust how much tension is on them as the product's moving through. In the front of the machine, we have our touchscreen controller and our feed and our motor station, which we'll get back to in a second. When you do receive the machine, besides the brake arm, there are a couple electrical connections that are made in the back. These are well marked, and there are pin configurations so they can only fit in the specific locations. This is our loading station. This is where the products to be labeled are stacked. If your product is very long, there is an extension which will be provided, and you can remove this shorter deck and replace it with the longer deck here. The hopper has two bars to keep the product safe, and these are easily adjusted by using these black thumb screws on both of these arms for the hopper. The feed station also consists of a friction feeder. We have two parts to that. This is our hold down, which is spring controlled. And then we also have a pressure roller here, which is controlled by this thumb screw and lock screw. Now, this may take a little bit of adjustment once you get set up for the individual product to be labeled. And what these two will do is the friction feeder system here, consisting of both of these parts, they'll create a space between each of the products as they're being fed. That space is necessary for the start sensor, which we pointed out a little bit earlier, so that it knows when to apply and to feed and apply the label. There's also a start sensor here, so that when there is no product in the feed station, it knows to shut down the conveyor until more product is loaded. Let's go to the front control panel of the machine. We're going to start here on the right. This is an emergency on-off switch, which you just press in case of a jam or an emergency of any sort. To release, you just turn right. When the emergency stop is pressed, none of the functions of the machine will work. This is our touchscreen controller. Now, the touchscreen controller controls all electrical aspects of the machine. One thing that's very unique about our machine is the fact we have 5 different memory presets. So for 5 different types of products, you can set up all your label head settings under each individual file. So in order to do that, we just press File. Now, right now, number 3 is highlighted. That means we're using file number 3. And we're going to go into this. There is a sub-menu. So when we press number 3, you'll see conveyor stop time and labeler setting. We're going to go into conveyor stop time first, and this is basically the length of time that when the load belt or the move belt doesn't see product, it'll automatically shut off. So this is something that's easily adjusted. Anytime you make any change in the setting, so if I do the move counter and set it to 20, I hit enter and save. And as you can see, each count is 0.01 of a second. 0.1 of a second, excuse me. And that's your delay. So I hit enter and save. And now I can go back to the home screen from here, or I can go back by using the arrow. Under the labeler setting, we have 3 main settings. Label speed. The label speed is going to be relative to the move belt speed. And that's adjustable by the knob over here on the right, which we'll talk a little bit about more back in a second. Start delay is the delay from where we have the bag crossing the start sensor or the product to where we want to label. So we're currently at 400. So 400 may be centered. If I wanted to come more to the bottom of the bag, I would reduce that number. If I want to go to the top of the bag, I would increase that number. Stop delay is the delay from the stop sensor, which is the sensor up here along the feed channel, the feed path of the label. So as I mentioned in the beginning, you want about 2 millimeters of label out below the peel plate. It may be physically hard to do that utilizing the vertical adjustment for that sensor. If this is where stop delay comes in. Also, if you have different label sizes and you don't want to physically move that sensor, which I would recommend, you would use the stop delay. Again, if I want to change the start delay from 400 to 600, all I do is press the box, 600, enter. And then you hit save, OK. Now when I go back into file 3, that's at 600. I'm going to go back to the original setting of 400. And this is how you change any of these settings. You just press the box you want to change, hit the variable you want, enter, save, OK. So that's our file. So now we can see up here we're on file number 3. If I want to change to file number 2, I would just hit that, hit home. Excuse me. I would hit, go back, hit labeler setting. For 2, I'd go into it. I just put 150, enter. I do save, OK. Now we're on file number 2. I'm going to go back to file number 3, hit save. And now the system's running file number 3. Option. Option allows you to turn various functions of the machine on and off. So right now we have our labeler is on, which means this unit here is active. When I'm setting up for a new product, I might want to turn that off so I'm not wasting labels, just to make sure I'm getting the product to feed through smoothly. and getting the space between each product that the labeler needs. So I could turn that off just by pressing it. Now we can feed product through and the label head will not activate. So I'm going to turn that back on. This unit has a target counter. The target counter allows you to preset a number, and once that number is reached, it will stop the machine from labeling and the screen will turn orange. So if I press that on, you'll see that this target now is highlighted. We clear the number on top, so with 0, now once we label 500 units, the unit will stop. I can turn that on and off easily just by going in, and you can see now I turned it off, it's no longer highlighted. Load stop is that the machine will stop once the load in the hopper is completed. You can also turn your load conveyor on and off and your move conveyor, which is this conveyor as well. You also have print settings, which right now we're not equipped for a printer on this machine. There's another sub-menu called Error Set, which allows you to turn various error codes on and off. And this is more for an automated system. We suggest this is off unless the machine is put into a fully integrated system. I/O, your input outputs. This is showing the actual inputs outputs of the machine for potential diagnostic needs. As the bag is being run through, you can see the inputs and your outputs. And if you watch this as the machine is labeling, you can see the various sequential function of the machine. And then we have our run stop. So if run is shown, the machine is not in the run position. If stop is shown, the machine will now cycle. Going to this control area here, you have your main power on off. Now, one of the things that makes the Mini-Con BL different than other machines on the market is we have 2 separate feed motors and you have 2 separate feed controls. So as we mentioned earlier, what we're doing is we need to create a space between each product as it's feeding out. That allows the start sensor to pick up each product individually. So normally the back sensor, which is the load sensor, is going to be set slightly slower than the move belt. And that's how we have it set now. You have 3 on the back and 4 on the front of the move belt. So now we're ready to put our product into the machine. So we have our ramp here, which just lifts up the back end for easier feeding. And as I mentioned, this should be adjusted so that only one product is feeding through at one time. Normally, the spring controlled here does not need to be changed. And the only thing that might need to be changed is the gap in the feed system here. We have a second set of feed rollers here, which helps separate the products so only one feed at a time. And this is our load sensor. So when I cover that, it knows that that this product's to be labeled. And that will shut off automatically shortly because of the load sensor. So we're going to take some bags we have, put them into the machine, and you always want to just put that first bag out, and the machine will start and it'll feed. Now you can add product into the hopper as other product is currently feeding. So we'll run some more. So this is the basic setup of the machine. So just to go back a little bit, In the file, if I wanted to move this label further to the top of the Ziploc here, I would increase my start delay in the file. If I wanted to move it down, I would decrease it. Thank you for your interest and purchase of our Tach-It Mini-Con BL.